Yes, miracles do happen. You may not believe that right now, but I think by the end of this video, you might just change your mind, because we're going to go into a specific example of a Eucharistic miracle that is highly evidential, including a primary document from a forensic pathologist that affirms a Eucharistic miracle and contains some pretty shocking information. But before we get into that, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel here on YouTube, and at the end of this video, check out the links in the description. So first, let's get into what a Eucharistic miracle is. A Eucharistic miracle is an event unexplainable through naturalistic means involving a consecrated host. And a consecrated host is what you see when you see a Catholic Mass and the priest says the words of consecration over the bread and wine in communion. Typically, Eucharistic miracles are in the form of the bread in communion or the consecrated host developing flesh and blood. Now, this might sound kind of scary. Understandably, that might sound a little creepy. However, this does affirm a core teaching of Catholicism, which is that when we do partake of the Eucharist every Sunday, we are partaking in the real body and blood of Jesus Christ. And the story of this specific Eucharistic miracle that we're looking at today starts in 1996 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where priest Father Alejandro Peze was ending Mass at the parish Santa Maria y Caballito Almagro. A woman brought a consecrated host to the priest after Mass, saying that it had been left in a candle holder. Now, unable to consume the host, which is what typically happens when a priest finds a discarded host. Instead, the priest placed it in a dish of water and put that in the tabernacle so that it can dissolve. However, the next day when he opened up the tabernacle, he found that it had not only not dissolved, but it had developed a red color. Father Peze quickly informed Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio, who would later become Pope Francis, who instructed that the host should be professionally photographed. The photographs clearly showed that not only had the host become a fragment of bloodied flesh, but it had grown substantially in size. After this, the host was kept in the tabernacle for several years, yet had not suffered any decomposition. So Cardinal Bergoglio ordered a scientific inquiry into the host. In 1999, Dr. Ricardo Castañón Gomez took a sample of the bloody fragment and sent it to New York for analysis. Now, he did not want to prejudice the study in any way, so he didn't even tell them where this bloodied fragment had come from. Now, Dr. Frederick Zugibe, I don't know how to pronounce that, was one of the scientists studying this piece of bloodied flesh. He is a well-known cardiologist and forensic pathologist at Columbia University. And he says in his own report, quote, "The slide consists of cardiac heart tissue that displays degenerative changes of the myocardial tissue, with loss of striations, nuclear pycnosis, aggregates of mixed inflammatory cells consisting of aggregates of chronic inflammatory cells, which are the predominant cells admixed with similar numbers of acute inflammatory cells. The directionality of the myocardial fibers indicates that the site of these changes is relatively close to the valvular region in the ventricular area of the heart." When I was later told that the heart tissue was kept in tap water for about a month and transferred to sterile distilled water for 3 years, I indicated that it would be impossible to see white blood cells or macrophages in the sample. Moreover, it would be impossible to identify the tissue per se, as there would be no morphological characteristics. In short, the analysis found that the substance was human heart tissue containing intact white blood cells, indicating that the tissue was alive when the sample was taken. Which means that when Dr. Ricardo Castañón Gomez took the sample from the host, the tissue was alive. Otherwise, there would be no white blood cells. After this tissue had been analyzed and the results were published, it was determined that there was no naturalistic explanation that could possibly account for this. So the church determined that this must have had supernatural origins. As I alluded to earlier, this is not the only case where this has happened. There have been over 100 Eucharistic miracles that have occurred that are recognized by the Catholic Church, and all of them that have been scientifically studied, where the blood has been analyzed and genetic analysis has taken place, have found that the blood type is always AB, which is the universal receiver, that the tissue is always heart tissue that has undergone severe trauma, and that white blood cells are present in the sample, which means that the tissue was alive when the sample was taken. Think about it. These miracles took place thousands of miles apart, and it's sometimes thousands of years apart, all the way back to the earliest known Eucharistic miracle in Lanciano, Italy, in 750 AD, and even the Shroud of Turin, which has blood on it, which is of type AB. And for several of these Eucharistic miracles, we have access to the primary medical documentation where they analyzed these samples. For example, we have an excerpt of a lab report from Pomeranian Medical University in Poland, which studied one of these Eucharistic miracles. We also have an original report from Dr. Linoli, a professor of anatomy and pathological histology and former head of the laboratory of pathological anatomy at the hospital of Arezzo, Italy, who also analyzed the Lanciano Eucharistic miracle sample. And you can even go view one of these miraculous hosts yourself in Sokolka, Poland, at St. Anthony of Padua Church. As far as I'm concerned, the evidence is undeniable. We have the primary scientific literature attesting to these miracles. This isn't just hearsay. And we have scientists themselves saying that there is no naturalistic explanation for these things happening. But if you can think of a naturalistic explanation, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Also, another line of argument that I heard when I was a Protestant and brought these miracles up to my pastor and said, if we are the true church and the Catholic Church is nonsense, then why do they have these miracles, especially Eucharistic miracles? And the response I got was something along the lines of, well, I'm not saying that it's demons, but it could be demons, which even at the time was very unsatisfactory for me, especially when you consider that if the devil were trying to mislead people and lead them out of true Christianity, even if he were doing that in some branch of Christianity, he does not have the power to give life. And what we find consistent with these Eucharistic miracles is that the scientists agree this tissue was alive at the time the sample was taken. So not only was the tissue alive at the time that it was placed into the host, but it was alive when the scientists took a piece of it to go analyze in a lab. And if Satan doesn't have the power to give life, then how could he have put living tissue in a host? So I don't know. Personally, I think if you're coming at this from a Protestant or even an atheistic perspective and trying to discredit these miracles that have all of this attestation, it's an uphill battle on your part, and I don't envy being in that position. But I would still love to hear what you think about this in the comment section below. Make sure you give this video a like. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here. Check out the links in the description. And until I see you next time, God bless.